Breakups can be jarring. You spend a lot of time, energy, money committing to somebody. Could be a romantic relationship, could be a business partnership. Sometimes it's fan and celebrity. We have a relationship with people we extol, we admire, we want to be like. In ways, these celebrity fan relationships can run longer and deeper than some of the other types of relationships. You figure that they wouldn't cut so deep emotionally, but if you think about it, we're always looking for that flattering reflection of ourselves. The person we want to be like, want to become, at the very least, want as a part of our lives to entertain us, maybe educate us. So breaking up with a celebrity, severing the bonds of our fandom, can be some of the toughest breakups around. Hello and welcome to the No Hair, All Heart podcast. I'm your bald host, Mookie Spitz, and I'm going to talk about my heart being broken by Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Maher. I'm a science geek. If you're familiar with some of my writing, I just published a science fiction novel, first in a series. I love science. Ever since I was a kid, I was fascinated to learn how the world works. And I got into reading science books, watching science documentaries on television. That light has never gone out. If nothing else, with age, it's gotten even more intense. Thanks to digital, I'm on YouTube watching my favorite science YouTubers, Sabine Hassenfelder, Derek Mueller at Veritasium. I like Michael at Vsauce too. List goes on. I've got my favorite science celebrity storytellers. Neil deGrasse Tyson, arguably, is one of the best. He's friendly, personable, effervescent in energy and enthusiasm. What's not to like about Neil? He got Me Too'd a few years ago, but a lot of folks got Me Too'd a few years ago. Louis C.K., for example, is still my favorite comic. And for a while, we're a little bit disconcerted, disappointed. I remember hearing about Louis C.K.'s antics and being, really? Your comedy's not funny anymore? Because it was funny when you were the helpless guy enduring this kind of eccentric nonsense, not perpetuating it. But with time, even with admission of his guilt, which, by the way, was one of his funniest skits in years, if you've seen it, where he actually talks about his issue, talks about being that guy and apologizing. With Neil, the allegations were never proven. And all that aside, I just always loved Neil and always looked forward to engaging with his content. His Facebook page, the Star Talk podcast, with a very funny comic who joins him as a sidekick. Again, what's not to dislike about Neil deGrasse Tyson? And at the top of the list was his uncanny ability to not only make esoteric scientific topics compelling, but to simplify complex topics and make them accessible and even fun to a broader audience. I look at my own stuff. Sometimes I'll listen to my own podcasts. I replay the videos that I do on TikTok and Instagram, etc. And I realize that I am not for everybody. I did a ChatGPT analysis of my recent novel, and it, at least according to its LLM opinion, my stuff just isn't for everybody. I tend to be denser, a little bit obtuse, eccentric in my own way. On video, I tend to yell at everybody. My own son told me that my videos aren't particularly appealing to him, that I come across as a raging old bald guy. And that's all okay to me, and I don't think I'm going to adjust my style to suit the needs of any type of audience except myself. And I'm willing and actually eager to take the consequences of that misanthropy, if you will. I just like doing this, and I'll keep doing it, and I don't want to placate anyone. So there. But that said, the reason I bring this up is Neil is a natural. Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of those guys at a party you just want to sidle up next to and bullshit with. He's fun to watch, and he's accessible to everybody. Thus, his success, his appearances on late night talk shows. And in summary, everyone loves Neil, including misanthrope Mookie here. Woohoo. So what happened with me and Neil? Well, I had a girlfriend in New York City. And she came to the realization, maybe with some coaxing on my part, that we were always doing stuff related to her. I have this tendency in relationship, which I will accept responsibility for, of placating lovers until I reach the point where I passively aggressively get triggered. I give, am the consummate yes man until it tips, I feel taken advantage of, then I get triggered. So we didn't quite reach the point in this relationship yet, but I have a feeling that she felt it was brewing. Her friends, her movies, her events, her family. What about Mookie? So she took it upon herself to find an event that she thought would make me happy. It had nothing to do with her. It was all about me, and I appreciated that. So the event was a night with Neil deGrasse Tyson at the Beacon Theater in New York. Iconic, beautiful. If you're going to pick a night out in New York City, there's a handful of venues that could be considered landmarks, like the Beacon. Maybe the Bitter End in Greenwich would be another one for music. The Beacon's there, of course, for concerts, but also for live interviews and talks. The 90-second Why is an analogous example. And the Beacon, not too far from the Y, is this kind of place. So I was looking forward to it. I appreciated that she proactively got these tickets. And the one missing component in all this was what the hell exactly Neil was going to talk about. Now, his topics range from timely subjects that percolate up to the headlines of science news, or topics that he knows are people pleasers, like everyone always loves to hear about black holes. So there was the question mark as to what exactly Neil was going to talk about. Adding to the fanfare was a live recording of Star Talk. So they oftentimes do this where he'll do them live, not just in the studio. This was that kind of an event. But the guest that he was going to have, remained a mystery until we arrive at the venue. And much to my shock and dismay, that guest was Columbia University professor and the self-proclaimed grandfather or godfather of string theory, Michio Kaku. Now, Michio Kaku has risen to fame and, in my estimation, infamy with a tsunami of best-selling books ostensibly about science. Now, don't get me wrong. The guy in his prime was brilliant, clearly a mathematical prodigy, and his contributions to string theory, especially initially, were significant. He has written a bunch of peer-reviewed, authoritative papers in his respective fields of expertise. Okay, he's got the pedigree. But for the last 10, 20, 25, 30 years, this guy has been publishing, in my humble opinion, an endless stream of nonsense. He takes current scientific speculation and draws it out to the point of absurdity. String theory, for example, started out as a great idea, and it remains the only major theory that somehow cancels the infinite results that physicists get when they do their calculations about nature. The popularity of string theory at its core is its ability to cancel out these infinities. The way it does so, though, is by adding, and again, you're just hearing it from me, an absurd amount of dimensions to our model of reality. 13 dimensions. Not 3 or 4 plus time, but 13, all bundled up in these manifolds that are literally the backdrop of the universe. Now, I'm not going to sit here and prove or disprove string theory. I'm merely expressing my opinion and frustration, which what I believe is a dying and arguably dead form of speculation. So far, not a single hypothesis or conclusion from string theory has been proven in the laboratory. Not a single one. String theory dominates many of the departments, the physics, fundamental physics departments of so many major academic institutions throughout the world, especially the United States, and no evidence-based confirmation. And conversely, many of the ideas that have come about through string theory, for example, supersymmetry, that all the fundamental particles and their force particles have their supersymmetric doubles, have been disproven by some of the huge accelerators and experiments that string theory recommended scientists build. So, okay, enough of my rant against string theory. More topically, Michio's latest and greatest slinging of the overhyped scientific bull is what people are calling quantum supremacy, which is essentially quantum computing taking over where conventional digital computing leaves off and transforming the world. Now, string theory in some form could reappear in the 24th century as a viable model. Maybe that's the case when more technology and some of the loose ends, even on the mathematics side, are figured out. Maybe. But I would say and agree with Michio that there will be quantum supremacy. It's not an if, but a when. My problem with Professor Kaku's whole approach here is that he is stating for the record that it's happening now. And he does this analogously to his ranting about string theory, devoid of any real evidence. I'm sure you've heard about quantum computing and the amazing things that it can do, that it could run a calculation in 4 seconds that would take all the computers in the world until the end of the universe to do. But most of these statements and the problems that ostensibly have been solved using quantum computers are in a very, 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 very narrow range of calculations. And quantum computers remain cumbersome, awkward, expensive, difficult to design, develop, and maintain, and way far from any kind of pragmatic application. Look it up. Do a chat GPT on the problems with string theory. It'll show more or less my point of view plus a counterpoint. But there's no counterpoint right now as to the paucity of evidence-based examples of quantum supremacy. It hasn't happened. But if you listen to Professor Kaku, he goes on and on that it's already here. And he did it again in front of Neil and in front of the eager and applauding New York audience. Once again, as I knew he would, this guy starts bloviating about quantum supremacy. And Neil just kind of sat there. And Neil knows. Neil's a smart guy for all the reasons that I cited earlier. Neil knows that Michio is mostly full of shit. Once again, just do a search. Quantum computing. Examples of successful implementation. Go for it. Knock your socks off. So Neil knows that Michio is blowing smoke up everyone's ass again. Just like he's been doing for years about string theory, just as he's been doing for years about wormholes and multidimensional reality and faster than light travel. And it goes on with this guy. So he's doing it again. I knew he would do it. And then the moment comes in the evening, early on, where Neil asks the question, which is like, hey, can you share with the audience a few concrete examples of quantum supremacy? Michio does what Michio always does, which is deflect, not answer the question at all. And the reason is he doesn't have any examples. And Neil, instead of calling him out on this, just kind of nods, yeah, and they keep talking bullshit for another hour about quantum supremacy. Now, I feel it's not only a disservice to the audience whom they're miseducating, disseminating false information. These are lies. No. You can say all day long what I said a little bit ago, that quantum supremacy will happen. I'm confident it will. But you got to be realistic about stuff. It's like an intellectual Ponzi scheme here that you know in 50 years, 100 years, this stuff is going to transform our lives. But you also know by the evidence of your own senses that none of this is happening right now. And not only is none of this happening right now, we've made advances, significant advances, many of them recent, for example, cutting the error rate in these quantum calculations. Microsoft might or might not have created an air quote new state of matter, the Majorana quantum computer, to make these calculations more efficient and pragmatic. But these are baby steps to the inevitable sprint and marathon that will be quantum supremacy. But it's not here yet. It's like talking about Elon Musk's base on Mars right now, which is, hey, Elon, tell us about the base on Mars. And then Elon bloviates for an hour and a half about the base on Mars. Well, we're gonna get there, but we're not there yet. And hyping it up by telling the audience, the public, about a base on Mars that doesn't exist to get more funding and to get more eyeballs and to clickbait yourself into the Beacon Theater is bullshit. And Neil knew this. And Michio knows it, but has been doing it for 30 years. He's like that Harvard professor who said that this big chunk of space rock heading into the solar system was no doubt an alien spacecraft because it was wobbling through the solar system in a way that could only be controlled by a pilot. And then what? We did a little bit more research, and the more likely explanation is that it's shaped like a cigar, this object, and it's releasing gases like a comet. And since it's not a spherical kind of thing and it's tumbling, when it releases vapors off of its surface by getting closer to the sun, then it's going to kind of wibble and wobble and do these kind of weird moves. That's a way more likely explanation than it's an alien starship. It's the same kind of hype and bullshit. The Harvard professor knows that he's going to get front page news, and Michio has sold a lot of books. And he got his ass on stage. He continues to make himself relevant with bullshit. And he got himself on stage with Neil. Now, I understand why Neil is playing ball. And while Neil is playing ball is, Michio is a Columbia professor. He's popular. He gets a lot of clicks and likes and shares. And being a part of both the scientific community in cosmology, in physics, and also being a social media celebrity and influencer, Neil knows better than to shit where he eats. But in my estimation, it's not shitting where you eat. It's exposing the bullshit of one of your peers. And in order for all of us to flourish, at the very least, Neil has got to call this stuff out. So specifically, what would have saved my romance with Neil deGrasse Tyson? That would have been if Neil would have nodded his head after Michio completely deflected the question and just at least said something to the effect of, well, that's not exactly a list of quantum supremacy opportunities or proof, but we all know that this is coming down the pike. And several experiments have demonstrated that we're on the right path. But we should be clear to the audience that we're still talking in speculative ways, right, Michio? We're talking about what we think is gonna happen, but hasn't really happened yet. I would have been okay with that. It's like if you have a life partner and they do something that really pisses you off. Well, you've had this relationship with them for years. You've invested all this time and effort, and you're more grown up than to just get triggered when you get upset at them for not paying attention to what you just said or refusing to pass the salt shaker. It's good to be a little bit more grown up than getting instantly triggered by one bad day or one bad argument. But what killed it for me is that in that moment, when Neil not only didn't push back, but in a sense reinforced and celebrated this charlatan, I was like, how can I take anything that this guy says and does and incorporate it into my worldview and life? It was a complete breach of trust. At that moment, I broke up with Neil. It's like coming home and finding your life partner in bed with the FedEx guy. How do you know that she's not boinking the cable dude, the gardener, or the pool boy? You'll never, ever not doubt what she's doing because it was such a flagrant and deep violation of trust. So when I saw Neil just playing ball with the likes of Michio Kaku, we were done. Whenever Neil's shit randomly comes up on my social fields, and it does because I'm the science geek and the algorithms keep sending me some Neil, I instantly plug that shit out. I am done. And the algorithms have finally realized I don't want to see any NDT. No more. No more Star Talk podcast. No more Instagram reels. No more documentaries. When Neil is interviewing some other scientist or is being interviewed on a talk show, I can't trust him. He fucked the FedEx guy. If he fucked the FedEx guy, if he reinforced and celebrated the nonsense that was talking out of Michio's mouth for an hour and a half at the Beacon in New York, then we're broken up. Now, what about Bill Maher? Now, Bill Maher is similar, and I don't even think I have to go into this much excruciating detail with him. I used to dutifully watch him every Friday, and actually not even watch him, but listen to him. I prefer podcasts as a way to absorb most content. So all the news shows I listen to, and I try to get both sides of the political aisle and in between, I do so through podcasts. I have a Spotify account just for this, even though they still pump ads in there. Very annoying. And maybe on YouTube Music. And I have the New York Times app to show that kind of bias, at least in terms of having its own app. And I absorb a lot of content. Once again, I try to be full 360. I listen to Fox News. I try to get it all. And I listen to this stuff. So part of my ritual on like a Saturday morning, at latest on a Sunday morning, and I used to always cherish it like a gem. I look forward to it. Like I look at my feeds and Bill Maher's like, what is it? Like 50 minutes long. And I used to love the new rules section, which is his own little essay on one piece of the news. And I've always found them brilliant and hysterically funny. I like his guests. Bill Maher's talent is astonishing, improvisational. He's quick on his feet. He's always funny. Yes, he's arrogant. He's arrogant to the point where I've just gotten very frustrated with him in the past, akin to Scott Galloway. Scott Galloway is also brilliant, but I can't stand him because he's just effervesces such haughty arrogance, kind of like I do, kind of like my kid doesn't like me on TikTok, kind of like I'm not nearly as popular as I should be on social media, given the amount of stuff I throw out there. And I think the reason is that I come across as an arrogant fuck like Scott Galloway does. But the thing is, he's got an entrenched brand. That's his thing. He comes in with reputation. He started earlier. He's got a huge following. So just like you expect Bill Burr to be an arrogant, blue-collar Bostonian guy, and then you're receptive to it, I think Scott Galloway's fans expect him to be the NYC professor and marketing powerhouse and agency guy and now podcasting juggernaut. I don't have that. I don't know if I'll tip the scale, but I'm just using Galloway as an example of an arrogant fuck. Bill Maher is an arrogant fuck, but Bill has just been so funny. It's very similar to Neil deGrasse, where you get over even the little eccentricities and stuff you don't like just because it's so damn entertaining. And you can't help but really like these guys. You create a relationship with these media celebrities. So I did that with Bill Maher too. And then I love New Rules so much that I often end the podcast at the moment where they transition from the round table to New Rules. And I'll go to YouTube and I'll watch that segment because they're funny visuals that go with his little monologue and essay. His video essay is fun to actually see, not just hear. That's how much I like and have loved and have had a relationship with Bill Maher over the years. Now, just as Neil deGrasse is excellent, remains excellent, here's the sad part of my story here. Bear with me. Just like Neil deGrasse continues to be excellent in his science storytelling, Bill Maher is excellent in his news analysis. Not only is it hysterically funny and ironic and cynical, but he cuts right to the heart of the excesses of both the left and the right in this country. Bill Maher is the ultimate bipartisan. So he skews liberal, old school Democrat, and yet he eviscerates the progressives. He's anti-woke. He's unabashedly pro-Israel. And I've had issues with some of his issues. So I've had a backlash to the backlash of Bill Maher's opinions. One of the most popular blogs that I wrote on Medium is What Bill Maher Gets Wrong About the Palestinians. So I don't always agree with him. I agree with him like 95% of the time. But even when I disagree with him, I could handle his arrogance because he's so perceptive, he's so smart, he's so damn funny, and because I had a relationship with him. I was a fan until the final straw. And that was several months ago when he opens his opening monologue by bringing out a stool and theatrically setting it down and then sitting on the stool like it's kindergarten reading time, only instead of him being a drag queen, he was a manipulated fool. From my point of view, Trump turned him into a tool. And Bill Maher hungrily ate that shit up because he had dinner with the President of the United States, the leader of the free world. He was invited by their mutual buddy, Kid Rock. And Trump was nice to Bill. Isn't that sweet? Donald J. Trump listened to Bill and his opinions and laughed at Bill's jokes and gave him a tour of the White House. And they had such an amicable, if you will, collaborative dinner at the White House. And Bill took it upon himself as ostensibly the bipartisan, nonpartisan, thinking man's thinking pundit, someone who is beyond bias, someone who brings the sides together to place a stool on the stage. And instead of doing an opening monologue dedicating 12 excruciating minutes to giving you, and in his own words, this wasn't his opinion about the dinner. He was going to tell us in detail what happened at this dinner, and then we can make up our own minds. I have never been so jerked off by anyone on any channel as I was for the 12 minutes I had to listen to this guy tell us about his dinner with Donald Trump and not think to myself, what the fuck happened to Bill Maher? And again, I think analogous to Neil deGrasse with Michio, you're in a moment where you're part of the power structure. You've got a network, you've got a community, you've got a base. And having power and even having money and influence makes you, in its own paradoxical way, vulnerable. So Bill was vulnerable to the powers of the Jedi mind trick of Donald Trump. And clearly, of course, Trump was nice to Bill Maher. Unless you've been under a rock for 20 years, 25 years, you know that Trump's greatest strength, hands down, is making people feel good in person. He might come across as a bust-out asshole at a rally, and that's a big reason his minions love him, because he's the asshole they want to fight the assholes they hate. We all get this. But it's so obviously one of many personas. And when Trump is in person, in his inner circle, he is maximally gracious and even kind and deferential. When the cameras aren't rolling, there's a different kind of manipulation at work. And if you spent a nanosecond with a narcissist in your life, you know exactly what's going on, which is you get fluffed and pampered and massaged and wooed to the point where you let your guard down, and then the narcissist comes in and eats you alive. That is standard operating procedure. And it's also worked well for Trump from New York to Washington, D.C., and now to the world. So exactly the same thing happened to Bill Maher. But here's the thing, just as I expected Neil to show a semblance, a glimmer of introspection and accountability, Michio, that's not exactly a list of examples of quantum supremacy happening in 2024. Can we assure the audience, though, that we're going to see some of this excitement soon? All Bill Maher had to do was go, hey, I know all of you've heard that I had dinner with Trump. And he could have made a joke out of it, too. I didn't really like, well done steak and ketchup. And, I haven't been to Taco Bell in years. Ha, 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 ha. And then Bill Maher could have said, not unexpectedly, the Donald was gracious. He treated me really well. He laughed at my jokes. And I just want to thank the President of the United States for being such a gracious host, welcoming me to the White House. And yes, we aren't naked in the Rose Garden afterward. Ha 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 ha. And that's it. That's fucking it for my dinner with Donald Trump. Instead, what he did was set up that stool, like I said, like he's reading to kindergartners, and educated us about the graciousness of his host. And the subtext here, which was about as implicit as a jackhammer in an orphanage, I get what Maher was trying to do. He was trying to show that he was again on brand for him, that he was being nonpartisan, that Trump has sued Bill Maher for calling him an orangutan, that Maher has continuously lambasted Trump for being the authoritarian that he is, that Maher has come right out and said that Trump is a threat to democracy itself on his show. And Trump has called Maher in public a loser and an unfunny comic and having shitty ratings and the usual. But in person and at dinner, they could overcome these past blemishes in their relationship and man to man eat that steak and laugh at each other's jokes and just be real people. I get it. But you need to be an even bigger moron in that moment to think that Trump didn't set it up so that Maher, I can't even pronounce this fucking name anymore, wouldn't do exactly what he did, which was bloviate for 12 minutes in front of millions of his own base, most of whom are lefty, that Donald J. Trump is actually a nice guy. Just like Neil, nodding his head, and Michio Kaku spouting more bullshit about science and technology. And just as I was done with Neil, I was done with Bill. How do you come back from that? How do I laugh at this guy's jokes after something like that? I couldn't. And here's the sad part. Just as I miss many of my exes, right? Whether it's my former life partner, relationships that I've had, we broke up. And we broke up for reasons. Good enough reasons that we broke up, that we stay apart. But I'll pine for them, I'll miss them, I'll think about them. And it's no different with Neil deGrasse and Bill Maher. Almost every weekend, I'm like, I wonder who Bill had on, and da-da-da-da. And immediately, just like with my exes, no, I'm not going to text them. Or if I am texting them, we're friends, and it's not going to go anywhere else. But it's sad. I lost 2 celebrity pundits, 2 people whom I really admired and got a tremendous amount of satisfaction and fun from. And I haven't been able to replace either one. Like, who's a great comic who could step into Bill's shoes? And who's a great science educator? Well, on the science education side, I've got Sabine Hassenfelder. I love her YouTube channel. And if you had any doubts about my rants about string theory and quantum supremacy, if not Michio, go check Sabine Hassenfelder out, because she's been ranting about all this stuff for years. I love her. She hasn't let me down. Maybe if I saw her live, she would just do some crazy shit. I don't know. Gore Vidal used to say he hated to meet these celebrity artists of art that he truly loved because they invariably let him down. And then he'd go back to their art and he couldn't appreciate it anymore because he saw the human, all too human vehicle of that artistic creation. But anyway, you got Sabine, you got Derek Mueller at Veritasium. He is an astonishing storyteller. And then you've got Graham. I always forget Graham's last name. Graham at 3 Blue, 1 Brown. That guy's a genius. He does creative visualization of mathematics in ways that are consistently jaw-dropping and astonishing. 3 Blue, 1 Brown. But none of these folks have the charisma and magnetism and engaging level of discourse and fun like Neil deGrasse Tyson. And there's a whole bunch of other comics, some of whom cross over into political territory. And you could say that I could swap Maher for Gottfried on Fox, and I'd be like, ugh. That guy's really smart, but he's so partisan and just vile to me in ways I can't do it. Who else can step into Maher's shoes? I don't know. If you are listening and you can make a recommendation, I'm all ears. But what I'm getting at here is the sadness of breakups, how breakups can happen even in silly but still consequential ways, like my ex-relationship with these celebrities. And it also goes to show you how much time and energy we put into these celebrities. And my last point to cap this off is some of this might help describe, let alone explain, our insane political polarization, because I'm a science and news junkie. So it's only natural that a celebrity scientist and a celebrity comic focusing on politics and the news would percolate up to being my best friends. And analogously, the people who worship Donald Trump, who've turned him into a cult leader, feel 10 times as strongly emotionally about Donald Trump. As inexplicable as that seems to me emotionally, I get it. I get it through the lens of my admiration for NDT and Bill. This is a characteristic of our society where friendship is hard to find, where we have more and more alienation from each other, where friends and family kind of suck, our colleagues are even worse, and we're inundated by data and streaming content 24/7, petabytes of this stuff. And yet human-to-human relationships are becoming increasingly difficult to engender, sustain, and grow. So as substitutes, if not avatars of avatars, we have relationships with these digital celebrities. And it's pervasive. It's in everything. Every interest has their Bill Maher and Neil deGrasse Tyson. If you're into extreme sports, if you're into cooking, if you're into history, Dan Carlin. If you're into history, check out Dan Carlin's History. Hardcore history podcast. Wow. In the past, I would love Ezra Klein and Sam Harris. And now Ezra Klein has gone to the New York Times and Sam Harris is still doing his Sam Harris stuff. I think in that battle, Ezra Klein has won for me. Sam Harris is still interesting, but I find him annoying for ways that'll take another hour. Maybe I'll devote another podcast to Ezra Klein and Sam Harris. But what I'm trying to say is in every specialty, in every industry, in every human interest, you have a celebrity who's a pundit, an influencer, a combination thereof, and we have relationships with these people. And we have similar digital relationships with politicians. So the takeaway and kind of full circle of this rant is I broke up with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Bill Maher. And America, in my humble opinion, needs to break up with the likes of Donald Trump on the one hand and Chuck Schumer on the other. We need a new generation of politicians in this country. I think the left and the right have let us down for their own reasons. I think the nation is veering toward mob rule. We've got ICE agents who are masked, who are rounding people up with no identification. We've got the Supreme Court who's basically giving the president unprecedented power historically to do all of these things. We've got the president deciding economic policy for the world on a whim. We have unprecedented corruption in the form of the Trump's own family capitalizing on crypto and on favoritism that's contingent on major foreign policy decisions that this president is making. And the list goes on and on and on for how we have fetishized digital personalities in a way that's been analogous to my love affair with Neil deGrasse and Bill Maher. And if there's a silver lining to any of this, then that is the power of a breakup. Because if your relationship is unhealthy and you can no longer trust the person that you used to extol, admire, and celebrate and be in love with, take it from me. If I can break up with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Maher, then you, Mr. or Ms. MAGA, can break up with your extremist, bully, mobster president. And if you're a left-leaning Democrat, then dumping Donna Brazile from the DNC and telling Chuck Schumer to go take a hike is not only possible, but necessary. So there is hope. There's hope. There's rebirth. If it's not working out, pull the ripcord. And you can do it in your life and in your relationships and in your jobs. And you definitely got to do it in this insane digital world because, and I have to go there, the bots are about to take over. It's not even going to be real people. It's going to be these dynamically created avatars who are going to mimic the perfect lover, the perfect politician, and the perfect pundit. And then, how are you going to break up with this synthetic celebrity who has been custom engineered for you? That's gonna be an even bigger problem. But for now, am I better off not having my feed cluttered with NDT and BM? Yeah, but just like with my relationships, I pine for them. I miss them. And at the same time, stand up straight, inhale and exhale. I will survive. I will carry on without them. And yeah, I'm actually friends with some of my exes, and that's pretty good. So maybe I'll take a peek at what Neil is doing every once in a while. I'm not so sure about Bill because he really hurt my feeling. Thanks for listening to the No Hair, All Heart podcast. I'm your host, Mookie Spitz. I hope you found this as entertaining as I did. I just had to let it out. And maybe by letting it out, you have your own catharsis. And at the very least, food for just a little bit of thought. Like, comment, share. I'll be back soon. Leave a comment. Send me a message. Tune in next time.